and welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Rod Gordon,
And I'm Martina Hughes.
and today we've got a topic.
That's true.
My brain's not here. I cannot get it to function.
That's okay. I have a functioning brain. We've got this. One brain between us.
That's all right.
So today we have a question from one of the members of our community. And the question is how to have conversations with an intimate partner about wants and needs. And for that to include sexual, emotional, and general wants and needs. So it is quite it's a big topic, and let's perhaps dive in of like what it takes to actually begin that sort of conversation with an intimate partner. What would you say is the starting point for that type of conversation?
Yeah, the starting point is the intention to have the conversation. Like it shouldn't be brought up casually or nonchalant or in an unsafe environment. It needs to be like in a safe space. So the intention to have the conversation, so both partners agreeing to it, to sit down and have a conversation about their wants and needs, but for there to be a safe container. And there's several things that are required to create a safe container. So one, a private space where both partners, feel safe. But then also I would actually I would set a timer for each person. And sometimes like these things I think go deeper when there is a container. So when they're like knowing I've only got 5 minutes to say what I want, it stops the fluffing around. And so there's a tendency to go deeper. But also then for the person who's holding that space for the person to talk, no talking, no interrupting, just listening and being curious about this other person. One of the things that we teach when we do these things is equanimity. And if we're going to play with desire, we need to have a really deep understanding of equanimity and how to cultivate that. But allowing the other person to just explore, because sometimes I know for me, I don't even know like what I want until I've heard myself say it. Sometimes I'll hear myself say it and go, yeah, I'm a no for that. Even though I just said I wanted it. And then other times I could be like a yes. And so there needs to be a safe space, for me to be able to explore like my own experience, to be free to say what arises and to be with that or not be with that, or to agree with it or not agree with it, for it to actually be an excavation and for it to allow myself to constantly reveal the desire or the need or the want that's sitting under the other one. One of the beautiful things about desires is as we touch them or speak them or play with them, in lots of ways they move, but there's always another one that reveals itself, which is really quite delicious. And so having equanimity, like having that safe space for one partner to talk and to really dive in, for it to allow them to be curious about their own experience, to allow them to actually find that part of themselves and to be curious with them. It's like, oh, wow, what is that? And without talking, but like even just holding the energy of like that curiosity of, wow, I wonder what does that mean for you? Like, what is it that sits in that for you? Like, what is it that you really want in that? Like, holding that curiosity in my body, because in my experience, like I can feel if the person I'm sitting with is just waiting to talk or if they're really deeply listening or and they're curious about what's happening. So holding that intention as the space holder with curiosity in my body to be like, hey, yeah, what's this? This is for you. Like, I'm here for you. What's this about for you? Like, I want to know all about it. And holding that in my body, I think, and I know when someone does that for me, it allows me to go deeper into my own curiosity and into wants or desires or needs, and to actually feel free and safe to explore those things. They're such delicate, vulnerable topics, and there isn't space for these things in our culture, or to have these conversations publicly or down the street. So when we do, we really want to hold that container and keep it treated as sacred, and that person is honored in their experience and loved, not judged in any
Yeah.
way. So that's where I would start.
Yeah. So there's a real sense in the way you describe it that there's, together with the curiosity, the equanimity, there's a generosity. So even the person setting up the space is not like, let's talk because I have some things to say. It's more,
No.
it's like, it's like, let's talk. I'm curious about you.
My body just went.
Yeah,
Gorgeous, thank you.
And so it's like, let's talk because I'm curious about you. I want to hear what's important, what's valuable for you.
Yeah.
And if
I can feel that whole I need to talk. It's like my body's still reeling from that. I would love to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I would use something along those lines if you're talking to a man. But any of the we need to talk, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, and certainly somebody may have a need or something that has some urgency or pressing kind of urge to talk. Particularly women often have like emotional, like, oh, there's something going on and I need to talk. But then if we put that urgency onto our partner, it often pushes them away. So as a woman, part of what I will work with is like, oh, okay, there's something I want to talk about. Can feel how I feel really urgent about it. And if I'm urgent about something, it'll be like, what's the charge here? What's the thing that I feel so uncomfortable about? And how can I take some space and time to uncover the emotions and feelings that are here so that I don't walk into a conversation with Rod with that, like, we need to talk kind of energy that is only going to push him away. And then to be able to sit with it and go, oh, yeah, I feel really uncomfortable. Maybe it's like I haven't allowed space for my feelings. Maybe something's happened that I feel unclear about. But even giving myself permission to get in touch with those feelings, first of all, so that then when I approach Rod, it can be from a place of, hey, I've really got something going on and it might still have some charge in it, but I'd really love to have a talk if you're available for it. That way it's still an invitation rather than a demand or an expectation.
Yeah, I could actually feel the invitation in my body when you said that. My curiosity immediately came online. There wasn't that pushing away feeling that you described before so perfectly.
Yeah. So, yeah. And because if we don't bring these things into our relationship, whether it's something emotional or whether it's sexual desires, whether it's, something we want to try or something we're not enjoying, if we don't have these conversations, essentially it creates stagnancy in our relationship. People get stuck in doing the same things, living out habits and patterns that really cause people to feel less love over time. So we need supportive, constructive ways in the relationship to be able to navigate these conversations.
Yeah, and I think on that topic too, like one of the things that I notice is that resentment breeds. Like and resentment gets bred a really specific way. It comes from tolerating something. So if I'm tolerating a feeling in my body or tolerating that my wants or needs aren't being met or there's no space for to have a conversation about those, then the resentment that starts to build. And resentment's like one of those things I know for me, like if I don't want to feel it, then it leaks out sideways. So my tone of voice, the way I speak to you, there's a poisoning that happens with resentment that allows it to to leak out in every area of life, even
Mm.
like, at work or, in social interactions. There's a bitterness that comes online and a resentfulness that really does poison the pool of intimate
Mm.
relationship. And I think that tolerating their no space, or that their needs and our needs or desires aren't going to be touched or met, that hurts so much. It's a
Mm.
really deep resentment that can build in that space for both men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. I even as you talk about resentment, I can feel places within myself over the years where it's like, squashing something down, trying to pretend it's not there,
Mm,
and then trying to love over the top of it. And then
good description.
the love starts to feel like false or artificial, a bit
Even
saccharine.
forced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anything that goes unaddressed means that we can't access the full depth of love, but we also can't access the full depth of sexual energy and sexual intimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the it points beautifully to the fact that, anything that we don't feel that's coming up to be felt stays in our body,
Mm,
doesn't disappear. It's really important. And you touched on the importance of feeling before, and what Martina was pointing to in terms of, sitting with the urgency. So really, like, it's a much deeper level practice to be able to do that. Not everyone can actually sit in the discomfort of their own emotional feelings and feel them.
mm,
And so it's a really, beautiful uh, experience that you're pointing to there, which I know we won't
mm.
dive into today, but it's really valuable for people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of creating the conversation, the very first place I would start is creating a time and a space together,
Mm,
setting a timer, like, 10 minutes. 5 feels a bit short, but
mm,
whatever feels right for you, and just let that person talk. And
mm,
I think the equanimity piece, how you can play that out, intentionally, is to just allow that person and encourage that person to be curious about their own experience, and recognize that, if you're the person sharing, that, like, I know for me, like, I won't place any expectation on you to fulfill any of my desires, to
mm,
do or be or say or want anything. Like, the first part about having these conversations, we can't have the conversation if there's an expectation that the person has to perform whatever we ask or whatever we desire. That's not what this is about,
mm,
and that puts something else on the relationship that will actually cause each other a lot of pain and hurt. But just being free to speak it is quite often enough, just to get in touch with it ourselves, to know that we have that feeling or impulse in our body is actually really beautiful.
mm,
And for our partner to allow us to have that, but for them to also know there's no requirement for them to do anything with any of our desires.
mm,
And so that's really important for the person sharing, is that you're free to share whatever desire arises, but just don't have any expectation. Don't place anything on the other person that says they have to fulfill that in any way. So that it's taking that away, taking that expectation away. Like, I know for me, frees me up in my body to be fully curious about whatever comes up, because I can say anything, that any impulse, any desire that just sort of pops, I can say it, because I don't even have an expectation on myself that I want it. And so I can be curious then. We can really dive deep if I allow space for, one, me not to be held accountable to having to fulfill my own desire, but also my partner not being required to do anything with that desire other than to listen and be curious.
mm.
Yeah.
I love that. And something I wanted to like tease out in that is that as a woman, hearing you speak your desires is such a massive like turn on. And even if I don't want to do the thing,
Mm.
I love that you're owning that you want to do the thing.
Yeah.
There's
That
something,
claiming
yeah,
the desire.
there's
It's really
something
beautiful.
in it that is, it frees my body when I hear you claim your desire and say the things you want, there's a sense of like, so there's, I think too often what I see happen in relationships, people become frightened that each other's desires are different. So then that fear of each other's desires being different causes people not to truly listen and not to be present. But what I've noticed is, that sense of if I'm really listening and hearing the desire in what you're speaking, it's like, oh, that is such a beautiful thing that he desires that. It's such a beautiful thing that he's free to say that he wants that. So that in itself, just the speaking of the desires, I find very arousing and activating in a beautiful way.
Yeah, there's a power in it, is what it feels like. It feels powerful.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Whereas when desires are withheld, it's like withdrawing power from the relationship.
And there's a loss or a deficit in the vacancy left.
Yeah.
Yeah, by that energy not being present or spoken to.
Mm.
Yeah, and it feels like it diminishes the relationship, but also its depth.
Yes.
Because there's something about speaking, like for me, speaking my desires and having the space to explore them, the extreme vulnerability. And if I'm being extremely vulnerable with you, I know I also feel closer to you, especially if there's an allowing of that desire. And it feels like that's a big part of whatever shrinks, that relationship at that time. Like the vulnerability of exploring my desire, it can be so excruciating. So sometimes for me, I don't even know what it is that I desire because I'm too afraid to even look at it and feel it because it's so vulnerable to even be curious about my own desire.
Yeah, so true. I know that sometimes putting words to something flushes up that like, oh, is it okay to want that? Will it be okay for him? Like what's he going to think of me? What's going on in my body? So sometimes getting the feeling of a desire from the body into words can feel really uncomfortable. So even just to claim, oh, I feel really uncomfortable saying this, struggling to find the words for this. Sometimes we need to just give ourselves permission to own the discomfort as a way of moving towards the expression of desire.
Yeah, like I'm not even sure there is a sometimes it feels uncomfortable for me, as in, or it's always uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's a really for me a really vulnerable state to place myself in. And I think that's why the safety aspect of the container is so important and treating it sacred is the vulnerability of what two people are entering into when they do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
that's
true.
where that equanimity really, I think, deepens the container and adds value to or enriches the feeling of safety in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. One thing I'd love to touch is when people feel some discomfort in the body because they've heard a desire that they're not willing to meet or not wanting to engage with, feeling that discomfort inside of your body, it's okay to feel it. And as Rod said, it's like it's meeting that discomfort with equanimity. Like it's okay for Rod to say something that I don't want to do. And it's okay for me to feel uncomfortable around it. But what's not okay is if I project my discomfort onto Rod. So that sense of,
Can you give an example of what projecting your discomfort onto me would look like?
yeah, sure. So if Rod said, let's say if he said, I want for us to have sex publicly somewhere, and I was a no for that. If I was projecting my discomfort onto Rod, I might go, oh, really? Do you? Oh, I can't believe you want to do that. So that would be projecting my discomfort onto him.
I can feel it. You're doing a great job. My voice has gone all tight and my breath shallow.
So to not project that onto him would just be to take a deep breath, feel the discomfort in my body, feel the part of me that may want to react, but just to allow my feelings. So I may internally just say to myself, I allow, and keep taking some deep breaths, and then stay curious about Rod's experience. So, then I might say to him, oh, so how would that feel for you? What would that bring to you? So I can address the discomfort in my own body without pushing it onto him or causing him to feel less than or shameful.
Yeah. And I think it's a real, it seems to be a thing, and I know I have it, is that this belief that our intimate partner should say, do, or be in a way that makes me feel good, that makes me feel like I'm in a state of love, because relationships are there to make us happy, and that's not true. So that I think that willingness to allow the discomfort and to recognize that it's okay to feel discomfort around our partner without having to make them wrong, to recognize that it's okay to feel that way, and that it's actually normal. That
Yes.
it's normal to feel discomfort. It's normal to not like something, and that it's to allow space for that in the intimacy in the relationship is it frees up both people to be curious about who they are, and the willingness to be in discomfort is such a beautiful quality to have, and to cultivate, like for both partners, to just willing to eh, allow myself to have the experience I'm actually having, to allow my discomfort, because it's me that's uncomfortable. It's not the other person that's wrong. It's like actually I'm uncomfortable. There's something going on in my body that I need to address. And just that willingness to sit in discomfort, in some ways it's honoring our partner. It's
Yes.
treating them as sacred, to actually be with our own discomfort and go, wow, I feel so vulnerable and uncomfortable. I don't know how to be with this. It's actually a really beautiful gift to be able to offer our partner, to show them our vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said just then, that sense of like, oh, I feel so vulnerable. I feel so uncomfortable. So there's a sense of really landing it, of like, that feeling is here in my body. It's not something to push out there. Yeah. One thing that people may be curious about is how do you navigate it if you have a desire that I'm not willing to meet? What are the keys for you to stay in equanimity with your own desire if I don't meet you in that desire?
I feel like I've forgotten the question already.
So if you have a desire and I'm a no for that desire, how do you stay in equanimity with your desire if I'm a no for it?
Yeah, it in lots of ways it's not even a thing. Not because you're a yes for everything, although that would be fun. There's so much potency in the freedom for me to explore my desire and to claim it. Quite often in the claiming of it, it liberates the desire. It's released from my body in many ways. Like the tension or the need to get something is removed when I claim it, when I speak it out loud. And there's a freedom in that that feels really good. But the tension, the need, the craving around it evaporates in that moment. It's like, there's this desire. The other part that I don't really want to dive into because it's too long, but it's, for me, I start to explore like what sits behind that desire, like what's created that desire.
Yes.
And that's the much deeper inquiry, which I don't think we should try and dive into today in a
Yeah,
podcast.
not
It's
on a
too hard.
podcast. It feels more like a
It's a,
mentoring experience rather
yeah,
than here.
even a retreat
Yeah.
experience. So, you know, for me personally,
Mm.
that's the pathway that I would take.
Yes.
I would dive into the what what is this desire born from?
Mm.
Where does it come from? What's actually sitting under the desire that I want to liberate?
Mm-hmm.
Because the desire in many ways represents a craving.
Yes.
So if we're talking like say the Buddhist lineage of a awakening, not that I'm not Buddhist, but just to give an example, they reference craving and aversion.
Mm.
And so often in desire there is so much craving present. And so what is it that I'm actually craving? And so that's where I would take the exploration. Like what's the deeper qualities and experiences I'm really looking for
Yes.
in that craving,
Yeah.
in that desire. So that's the pathway I would take, and there's a great liberation that happens in that, because I'm totally free of the desire after that.
Yes.
If I'm aware of where it's born from, but then I can actually create it in much different ways in my life.
Yeah.
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 And so even just the speaking of it is usually enough to take the tension off it. And to you know, then you know, I can be curious about it, you can be curious about it, but it's putting it in the space. It's like it takes it out of my body, puts it out here, and that just takes all the tension out of my body. So yeah, that's where I would start.
I know from my perspective in that case, I also look for, well, if I'm a no for the thing that's been requested, what is it that I'm a yes for that may have a similar flavor? Or what is it I'm a yes for that may meet that desire but in a different way? So there's also ways to play with it and be creative and exploratory within lovemaking for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. And even the curiosity and the play is often better.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, quite often I've had desires in my life, and having them fulfilled, like it kind of sucked. Like it was like, oh yeah, it was like wanting the thing was better than getting the thing. The desire, the longing and yearning that can happen when there's a desire that's not allowed to be met is kind of seductive and delicious. Like there's an ache and a pain and a hurt, and we can collapse into that, but we can also rest in it. And there's this delicious tension of like, here's this thing, I can't have it, but I want it. And I can't have it, but I want it. And that dance can be really quite delicious. And often for me, just that longing and yearning is more beautiful than actually fulfilling the desire.
Yes, yes. So true.
Yeah.
Longing and yearning certainly has a beautiful texture to it.
Yeah. And so allowing that delicious, intoxicating, rich desire to be present is actually really beautiful. It's kind of like that tension, like right before orgasm. There's that tension of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's the most beautiful part. The orgasm in the release is kind of like, well, as a man, you know, disappointing because nothing happens after that.
Yeah.
So that tension right before, you know, orgasm or ejaculation, like as a man, that beautiful, delicious tension that's so exciting that rips through the body. Like for me, having a desire that can be talked about, can be almost touched, but not quite touched, is like holding myself in that place. And it's like, oh, it's so delicious to actually allow that. Like it's uncomfortable and it's beautiful, and it's uncomfortable and it just kind of oscillates it around. And to allow it to be both is actually tantalizingly delicious.
Yes, yes. I can feel that for sure. For sure. Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. So I kind of like to play there, but not
Mm.
everyone's going to want to do that either.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to bring up on the topic of desire is that we've been speaking in a way assuming that people will will be able to speak to desires. But I know when I was younger, like in my 20s, my early 30s, even if somebody said, "How do you want to be touched?" I was like blank. Like I couldn't even answer a simple question like that at a certain
Mm.
point. And I know that that's common for a lot of women. I'm not sure if it's common for men, but I do know it's common for women to just have nothing in response, even to the simplest of questions when it comes to sexual intimacy. And so, what I know can be helpful is, even if the partner is genuinely curious, to give options. So it might be, do you want to be touched slowly or do you want to be touched fast? Do you like soft pressure? Do you like firm pressure? Do you like your breasts to be touched, or would you prefer for the sides of your body to be touched? So giving options can be a way to navigate for somebody who has trouble getting in touch with what their desires are.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that I'm laughing. Yeah, because I know you're a yes for all of those. It's not one or the other. You're going to be like, oh yes, oh yes. It depends on the moment.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is true.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I think there needs to be space for that too, to recognize that, especially for a woman, that
yeah.
moves quite quickly and fluidly depending upon the feeling state.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think if a man is navigating a relationship with a woman who doesn't know her desires,
Mm.
like really give her permission, give her options, invite her, like, oh, would you like me to touch you like this sexually? Would you like this kind of sexual experience? What are the flavors you'd like? Would you like something that's wild? Would you like something that's tender? Giving a woman options can be a way even to support her to find the vocabulary.
Yeah, and you may even need to actually play those out really gently, just
Mm,
to sort of see what the person actually wants to experience. Like, it doesn't just have to be a conversation. So, like,
mm,
what you're saying here is different to the first part where we're saying create a container. This is a different
yes.
kind of a container. It's an exploration.
Mm,
And again, I think it should have a timer on it. But
yes.
if you're going to, if the intention is to support the other person to
Mm,
become aware of their desire, they're not aware of their desire, then you would still set the timer, because there's
yes.
something about creating that creates a specific time frame where the conversation's going to start and it's going to end. Like,
Mm,
knowing it's going to end can sometimes allow us to go deeper.
definitely.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, start the inquiry, and then be really clear at the start though too. Is it just a verbal inquiry,
Mm-hmm.
or is there touch involved in the inquiry? Like, as in, do you want to be touched softly? Do you want to be touched firmly? Like, are we doing the touch while we're doing
Mm,
it, or is it to find out, or is it just a verbal inquiry? Get really clear on what the boundaries of your container are, so that the person who's exploring their desire feels safe to actually go there. It's a really
yes.
key piece. Yeah.
Definitely. Because, yeah, sometimes person may not know what flavors they want
Nope.
until they actually taste it.
Until they,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Mm,
very hard to know what it is that we want.
yeah.
But I think even what you're saying there too speaks to, like, culturally, like how shut down conversations are around sexual desire.
Mm,
Like I know it's really true for men. Like, there's
yes.
no space in our culture for men to talk about their sexual desire,
Mm,
especially if you're like a white heterosexual male. You're like
yes.
the scourge of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me. And so, if there was two men at a cafe talking about their sexual desire, you know, people around them would freak out.
Mm,
So,
mm-hmm.
like, women, even for two women, if they were sitting there talking about their sexual desire, people around them would be really uncomfortable.
Yes.
Not, I don't think as much as men, but would
Mm,
still be really uncomfortable. And given there's no space in our culture for these conversations, people's nervous systems haven't had the opportunity to acclimate to that.
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
it's very hard to know what you want when there is no space for you to explore that.
Yes.
And, like, even sexually, like, I don't know what it's like, now at school, because I'm well past school age. Let's not talk about age.
What trots vanity come out when we turn to age?
Yeah, I am totally vain. Um, but, like, when I was at school, it was literally like, don't get her pregnant, don't catch a disease.
Mm-hmm.
That was sex education.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't leave a lot of space for what are your desires? What do
Mm.
they mean to you? Where are they born from? How
Yes.
do you want to explore them? And so there's no breathing room in that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, we need to create that. And in our intimate relationships, we don't know how to create that because we've never seen it. We've never, embodied it. And so that's what this podcast is for. But just that not knowing within ourselves tells us that there's something shut down around our sexual desire.
Yes.
I know for me, like it was really hard for me to get in contact with my own sexual desire.
Mm.
And even at times now, it's still hard.
Mm.
Like it's so ingrained in me to be safe, to shut it down in some way. I've explored it at times and then, it's like come out wrong or bad. And I've been shamed and blamed and whatever, and sometimes rightfully so. I've unskillfully expressed my desire or been pushy.
Mm-hmm.
That's really dangerous. Like for a man to be pushy can cause hurt and harm. So, like, starting with these conversations is so potent because when we have those kinds of experiences, when we explore clumsily and unskillfully, creates a deeper shutdown in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for me, like I ended up just shutting down my sexual energy and sexual desire so much so that I felt like I didn't have any wants. It's like, oh, I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I'm good. But what that really wasn't an authentic expression of my desire. It was a display of how contracted and disconnected I was.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still parts to that now, even
Mm-hmm.
after exploring for years, there's still parts of me that I feel like I haven't fully accessed. And so it can be a really long journey for people. And it's really important to be gentle,
Mm-hmm.
to create safety, and to treat the other person's desire as sacred,
Mm-hmm.
to see them as divine in some way, and to seek out the divine in that person. And it's like, how can I be here for this person's desire? How can I love them in their desire?
Mm-hmm.
How do I hold that space with such integrity that they feel so free they can just explore any aspect of who they are and
Mm-hmm.
find their desire in their body?
Mm, yeah, I love that. Like, so that both people feel free, the one expressing, the one hearing. There's no demand, no expectation, no urgency, but both people get to feel free in that journey.
Yeah. And
Mm,
just know that you're actually helping each other to heal when you
mm,
have these conversations to explore our desires and to bring them out is to liberate them from the body. There's a
yes.
healing that takes place with desire, but it's such a shut down part of us. It actually creates so much hurt and pain and even illness in the body because we don't have access to the entirety of our being, of
Mm,
who we are. And so I think, these conversations have so many layers to them.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, being curious and supporting someone to find their desire is an incredible gift that we can give to another to allow them to be actually curious about the sensations they desire in their body that
Mm,
they would love to experience or feel. It's an incredible gift.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Feels like that's bringing us to a close on the topic of desire. I know you're aware that there are another 2 points within the question. We've actually hit them already. I checked
Ah,
already. So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you have more that you would like to say about sexual desire.
No, and it doesn't have to be sexual
Mm.
desire, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these can be emotional desires, they can be, needs within the relationship.
Yes.
Like, and again, but needs need to be met with no demand,
Yes.
so, or to be offered with no demand,
Mm.
and to allow that person to be free to respond or not respond. And
Yes.
so it's not always just sexual desires, but they will still all have drivers that are worth being
Mm.
curious about.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And for both partners to be aware of making space for each other. Like the more I'm curious about what Rod needs, what Rod wants, then the more love I experience, the more free I feel within myself. There's a sense of through being curious of his needs and wants, then I get to be in devotion and love and service towards you, and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's quite an inspiring invitation. Like when
Mm,
you're that curious about that, it drives my curiosity then about your desires and
mm,
what's present for you or what you need or what you want in the relationship. And it sort of becomes like that infinity symbol where both
mm,
partners are devoted to being curious about what the other needs or wants. Like I know for me, I can take my attention off myself, can
mm,
take my attention off that and place it on you, on what you want, because I know that you're already curious and you
mm.
see things that I don't see, and that opens my awareness and attention to things that I want that I didn't even know that I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that takes, I think, the whole thing to another level
Yes.
when we allow that kind of curiosity and exploration. That, like, when we add love and devotion to desire, we change it completely. It goes from that craving and aversion and just the primal sexual experience to, how do we awaken through our desires?
Mm-hmm.
How do we love through our desires? How do we deepen intimacy through our desires? And I think a big part of that is that curiosity, but then also that trust that that other person is there, like, that you're here to love me and to
Mm-hmm.
help me awaken to more of who I am, more of who I can be, to guide me to being a better version of who I am, which is exactly what I want for myself.
Mm,
But to sort of like let go of the need for me to do anything with that
mm.
and to allow you to show me, to allow it
Yes.
to be revealed. And there's something beautiful then when we add that element of devotion. If I'm devoted to loving you and to awakening those desires and needs and liberating them from your body, there's less need for you to place your attention on those things, because
Mm.
I'll see things, especially because we have, a committed practice together. I
Yes.
get to see you every day in all the different states and feelings that are present for you, and to watch, love be present with hurt, love be present with pain, like desire to be present with hurt and pain, desire to be present with tears and love and joy and pain, and
Mm,
watching, the mix of all these desires and emotions and how they move through your body and how they can actually move through with love.
mm,
And if there's a safe space, there's love, there's devotion, and there's a commitment for me to show up and hold you in that, I find there's a deeper letting go that
mm.
happens because I feel it. I
Yes.
feel it in my body and I feel it in your body.
Mm,
And I think there's something in there that opens up the experience for both people, that we go beyond sexual craving, like physically and emotionally, and start to use our sexual desire to awaken each other,
mm.
to see the aspects of ourselves and the other that haven't been seen, to reveal
Yes.
something new and to allow our desire to actually awaken us.
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. And because you've just referenced our committed practice, I think it's worthwhile just even saying here that for me, it's that practice space addresses like the needs, the wants, the feelings, so that nothing goes untouched, unresolved, unfelt. There's a sense that what committed practice gives me is like way more than I could have actually dreamt of. Like I have mornings when Rod and I are in our practice space together. It's almost like I have to pinch myself. It's like, this is really happening. Like I get to come to this space each morning and hear how Rod feels, share how I feel, witness and see him, have him witness me, express my love through my feelings, through my desires, hear Rod's wants and desires, feel them in my body, offer love through my desires to him. Like there's so much beauty that happens in all of that, that really does feel like, yeah, so often it's like it's a pinch me moment, like, oh, this is really happening. Like I'm living this, like way beyond what I previously dreamt or felt was possible. So, yeah, it really touches that part where our love is healing and it's growthful, but it is also then really, it becomes awakening because then my body's like, buzzing with love. And I'm like, whoa, there's so much love here.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And in many ways, the practice space is a deeper version of this container that we're talking about.
Yes.
Because we're making space each day for, for your feelings, for my feelings to be seen, the wants and desires. But to do that so consistently means, we both get to see how that ebbs and flows and moves and changes constantly. But there's a space for it.
Mm.
And having a space for it, just knowing that it's there each day, in many ways is really healing and liberating.
Absolutely, it is.
There's no need to sit on anything or hide anything. There's a space for it to come out each and every day. And there's something that's really rich about that experience.
Definitely. 100% agree.
Yeah. And so I think, creating something like that, which, you can do, like all the people in the community have got access to the practices and intimacy oasis. And you've got all our daily practices are in there that we do, but there's so much in there that you can actually do and add to your life that will actually guide you towards all these experiences.
Yeah, and that's really, it's also why we created Foundations of Intimacy, so people can have access to an online course that will guide them to creating these types of experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, and that helps people, like, to have a structure to follow. I think when you're starting out is really important, because the structure, one, will help people go deeper.
Yes.
It creates safety, creates a space for that vulnerability and openness to really be explored in a way that you can't just explore casually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
So,
what I love as a woman is that sense of like, having this space. It's like I get to feel my own commitment and devotion to relationship, and also your commitment and devotion to relationship. It's like each day there's a sense of, our relationship is being prioritized because we're doing these things together. And that is absolutely ecstatic.
yeah. And I think the only thing we didn't touch on earlier is what to do if you're triggered or activated. And I think many ways we haven't touched it, because as you do these practices and you deepen in it and you make it consistent, there's not really anything to be triggered by. It's sort of that sort of stuff falls away, the reactivity. But it's important, for me to recognize that if I'm reacting, then it's me that has a problem. Something's going on in my body. It's not whatever the other person wants or the desire. They're free to want whatever they want. But then how do I be with that reactivity that's in my body? Because that's showing me something about me.
Yes.
My reactivity has got nothing to do with what's triggering the reactivity, the person's behavior, what they're saying, what they want, what they need, blah, blah, blah. They're free to want or need or feel whatever their experience is, whatever the truth of that is. My reaction to it, my reactivity, that's on me. And so, the ways to work with that, like I love the I allow practice that you shared before, but, slowing the breathing down and the feeling, the discomfort of the reactivity, those points all support that kind of experience.
Yeah, definitely. And it is such a big topic, the reactivity, that perhaps at some point we do a whole other podcast episode on that.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, yeah, I love the flavor of creating sacred and intentional space to hear each other. Feels like where the real gold from today's episode is.
Yeah, and then the healing and the love that's generated and created between two people in the allowing of the other. It's unconditional love, because in the allowing and the equanimity, there is no conditions on that person. They're free to desire, feel, need, want whatever's there, and that's incredibly liberating and incredibly healing, to be loved unconditionally in our desires.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, that feels like it brings us to a close for today. Thank you so much for everyone who listens, and feel free to leave us comments and questions below.
Thank you.